Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to our Issues Birmingham. It's been a long Christmas holiday, I would say, but we are back in the studio and glad to be here. And our first guest of the year is Alan Miller. He's the CEO and director of the American Village out in Montevallo. Welcome to our show, Alan.
Thank you, Tommy. It's good to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
So I know Alan through the criminal justice system, where he was formerly a prosecutor in the Shelby County District Attorney's Office. That's our first meeting, I think.
That's right, yeah.
He also has an intense military background. He then went to do on some other things, and now he's where he is, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. So how did you end up at American Village?
Well, that was an interesting journey, Tommy. So
that's why we have you here.
All right. Well, I left the district attorney's office to go into private practice.
Not easy, is it?
Not easy. It was brutal, in fact. And then we ran right into the pandemic, and so all the courts closed. And so my assumption was, well, that's how it ends for me. Here lies Alan Miller, right? But then in the summer, the Marine Corps reached out, and they needed someone. You'll like this. I was uniquely qualified for a deployment to the Republic of Georgia to train their troops in preparation for a deployment to Afghanistan.
Ooh.
And I said, well, what is this? Why is it I'm the guy? And I had taken Russian as a minor when I was in school at Tulane. And I said, I don't speak a lick of Russian. They said, it's on your transcript, you're the guy. So I deployed to the Republic of Georgia October.
And he's not talking about Atlanta.
That's right. That's right. So, and got back a year later. And around
So you spent a year over there?
Yeah. Yeah, it was incredible journey. Nicest people you're ever going to meet. They love Americans. A beautiful country. Tbilisi is amazing. I hear that Georgian wine is an acquired taste.
Okay.
But they have.
I'm sticking with Sicilian wine.
I understand completely. I appreciate that. But no, just an incredible, amazing time over there. And when I returned, Tom Walker, who of course is the founder of American Village, was deciding to step down. And so I began the interview process there at that point in time, and was very, very fortunate to be selected to serve.
Well, some people may not know what American Village is, so why don't you shed some light on that for us?
Well, our mission is to strengthen and renew the foundations of American freedom and constitutional self-government, which, it says something, but doesn't tell you exactly what we do. We have an emphasis.
Tells a lawyer what you do.
Well, right. Emphasis on school programming, K through 12. So we have about, between 300 and 500 school students on campus every day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's
every day.
Yeah. So we use really high quality replica buildings and costumed historic interpreters. And we take these students and we put them back in time in 1775, 1776. And as much as possible, want them to stand in the shoes of the founders and the citizens of colonial America at that time, and introduce them to the War for Independence, the principles that launched
the Revolutionary War.
That's right. And then so at the end of all that, they'll have an opportunity to vote for or against independence. And it's a great way to learn.
And it's probably something adults should visit as well. I know I had a case one time in Virginia, Abingdon, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Tremendous amount of revolutionary history there that I had no idea until I got there.
I've learned so much. We all think that we have a firm grasp of the history of the time. I think what we lose track of more than anything else is the context that the founders were in. We have this idea that it was an easy decision for the colonists, that it was 100%, we're all backing independence, but it was much like we've seen throughout American history. It was pretty much a 50-50 split.
And it was warfare.
It was warfare, that's right, here in the homeland, so to speak, and against really incredible odds. And I think that is one of my favorite things to see at the village, is when you have students. Any teacher will tell you, anytime you have that many students on campus, you're going to have more than a handful who come from really challenging circumstances. Home life probably isn't what maybe it ought to be. And so as they hear these stories about our founders coming together based on principle, facing the world's strongest military, no reasonable reason to believe that they will succeed, but believing firmly enough in the principles they stood for to move forward with war against the British and succeeding ultimately. And I like to think that as those children are getting back on the bus to go back to wherever it is they came from, whatever situation it was that they were in, that they, something has changed for them. Hopefully something has clicked, and they realize that they are very much in control of their own destiny. They have opportunities here that they wouldn't have anywhere else, and it really is up to them, how they apply themselves and how they approach their future.
Is it a day trip? Nobody overnights?
It is a day trip. We do have a Trojan Patriot Academy, which is an overnight trip for rising juniors and seniors in the summer.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about specifics of the revolution.
Yeah.
And how far forward you go. I'm
Okay.
interested in
Okay.
from that time frame.
Absolutely.
This is Our Issues Birmingham. Thanks for being with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We're talking with Alan Miller, who is a director of the American Village out in Montevallo, right?
That's right.
So we've been talking about high school kids and day trips and things that go on, but it's not just limited to students and field trips.
No, it's not. In fact, that gets lost on a lot of people. We've done such an amazing job through the years. This is our 25th year at American Village. With those field trips, we've become really well known as a field trip destination, but we offer really, really fantastic public programming as well. We have Washington's birthday coming up in February, which is a great opportunity to bring the family to American Village and learn a lot about America's founding history. The Tulip Festival that we have, usually towards middle of February or early March, that really is up to the tulips when that starts. But that has become incredibly popular. I think it's a great way for people to, welcome in spring and enjoy some time in American Village. And then just this past October, we had our first ever really grown-ups only education event. It was a nice dinner with wine, and we had Clay Jenkinson, who's a very well-known historian, portray Thomas Jefferson, and his friend and noted historian as well, Hal Bidlack, portray Alexander Hamilton, and they engaged in this discussion, debate, and sometimes argument about what the future of the country should look like, Federalist and anti-Federalist. And
were they doing that from documents they had read from so that it is historically accurate?
Yes, absolutely. Both of these guys are great scholars, and everything we do at American Village, there are some controversial issues that come up, but our protection is being able to point people back to the document. This is what Thomas Jefferson said. This is what John Adams said. And so we're able to tackle those issues, hopefully without ruffling too many feathers, but I think it's just important that the history is known.
Well, you can't ignore in studying the American history and the evolution of this country and the soon-to-be Gulf of America.
That's right.
I like it, actually.
Yeah.
The Native American role in what occurred during that time frame.
That's right.
Do y'all address that as well?
We do address it. Our focus in the educational programming, of course, is on the conflict with Britain, the oppression from Britain to the colonists. But we do address it. There were a number of Native American tribes at that time,
Especially in Alabama.
some siding with
The Brits and
the
some with,
Brits and
I've
some with
read
the
that.
Americans. Yeah, and so we touch on it, but it is not a focus of the educational program that we have there. We do in our Thanksgiving program spend some additional time on that, but again, it's not the primary focus of what we do there.
When we're talking about America and its origins, and we're talking about the 1700s, what, 1776, of course, but it
Yeah.
started before then.
Right.
How far before then? Would you
Really,
say?
the trouble really started to get brewing around 1765 in Massachusetts.
And was that, does that have anything to do with the Boston Tea Party?
Oh yes. So 1773. It was about 8 years leading up to the Boston Tea Party, but it was people get wrapped around because we have no taxation without representation, and people focus on the taxation. The real problem that the colonists had everything to do with the lack of representation. They had no voice in Parliament, and I think
There was a parliament
in Britain.
in Britain.
And so, as a colony, that they had local bodies for governance here, but the taxes were being imposed upon them by Britain to pay for the debt from the French and Indian War. But again, the real issue was the lack of representation that they had, and as the founders saw it, we aren't really free without a voice in our own affairs.
Fairly accurate statement.
Fairly accurate statement. And I think that's another one of the things I really appreciate about the village and our mission. There is so much division in the country today. You'll have people say, "Gosh, I don't know that we've ever been more divided than we are right now."
Yeah. That's
yeah.
not true.
we've been
we
way more
started
divided.
out divided.
That's right. We started divided and we've stayed divided. But one of the things that I think, hopefully, that we're able to accomplish, especially when we have adult events like Hamilton and Jefferson, is we remind people that you can disagree civilly. We don't have to get angry at each other to have these disagreements. Some issues are tougher than others, obviously. But I think it's a good thing that we have, these opposing points of view. There is malleability, there's flexibility there, and sometimes the country will be in need of one point of view more than the other, and it's up to us to engage and be a part of that.
Seeing what's going on in today's political climate and studying where we came from, can you distinguish the degree of divisiveness between then and now in any way? Is it more intense now, or is it just a different kind of intensity?
I don't know that the intensity level has changed necessarily. I think what probably is more different now than it was then is the way we consume media, and that has a huge impact.
Because we didn't have it.
That's right. There are more people who are I'll say more informed. I don't necessarily know better or worse, but more informed.
They're provided more information, whether they choose to believe it or not is
That's right.
their choice.
That's right. And so I think it's a good thing that, on the whole, American citizens are more involved than they were at that time.
All right, we're going to talk about some other things when we come back from break. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. As you know, we're talking with Alan Miller with the American Village out in Montevallo. So 2026 is a big year. If you add 250 years to 1776,
That's right.
you come up with a celebratory year.
That's right. It is a big year for us in American Village, and particularly because American Village has been designated as Alabama's celebration capital for America's 250th anniversary.
Where else?
Yeah, no, it's the perfect setting for it, and we're incredibly proud to serve in that role. But we're not waiting until 2026. There's a lot of important anniversaries this year. April 18th is the anniversary of Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. And on April 18th, we'll be asking Alabama citizens, businesses, government offices, everyone to shine 2 lights on the evening of April 18th from their window, not so much just to commemorate Paul Revere's ride, but just an opportunity to stop and pause and think about our 250th anniversary. That's where we want to start thinking about it. Also, and this is an idea that's catching on nationally. It originated in Wisconsin, but also seeing that as a day of service across the country. The next day at American Village, we will kick off with a reenactment of the Battle of Concord Bridge, which, of course, would be the first time that Americans...
Where was that?
That was in Concord, Massachusetts, at the shot heard round the world. And that marks the first time that Americans stood shoulder to shoulder in defense of freedom. And so I think that's an important and an appropriate kickoff date.
Yeah, but when you say Americans, you're talking about transplants.
That's British colonists.
British colonists
That's right.
holding themselves out as this new place.
That's right.
Standing shoulder to shoulder with some Native Americans.
That's right.
That's right. Against their brothers.
That's right.
From across the ocean.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. It's really important, I think, for people to think about how difficult that would have been.
Yeah.
Very much like the Civil War.
And they're not, they're not using Glock switches and AR-15s.
No, it was very personal.
It is, yes. You mean up close and personal?
Up close and personal. That's right.
It was hand-to-hand combat.
That's right, yeah.
Oh my God, I would have never made it. I would have never made it.
Well,
between Vietnam and being born during the time of the American Revolution, I'm grateful to be sitting right here.
There's an amazing book. I cannot remember the author's name off the top of my head. It's called The Indispensables. And it is about the Marblehead Regiment in Marblehead, Massachusetts at that time. It was a seafaring community. And most people aren't aware, it was a very integrated community because it was a seafaring community. But you had Black, Native, the British colonists, all serving together in this regiment. It's incredible history, but it also does a very good job of detailing for you, just how brutal the combat was at that point in time.
Well, since we're about to take over Canada, was there any Canadian involvement in our revolution? I'm sure there was.
We made excursions into what is, now Canada. That was one of Benedict Arnold's big campaigns into Canada. Ultimately did not succeed. But yeah, they were involved at that point.
On a different note, I do have a question, and we still have enough time to get, I think, these 2 items in. I'm interested to know how far forward you move from the Revolutionary period to where? The Civil War, beyond?
No, we are very much focused on the founding era. And in fact, through this first 25 years, we've been really primarily focused on the Declaration of Independence, the principles that were the foundation for the Declaration. We are developing programming primarily for high school students, but also the public, that shifts that focus to the Constitution, the drafting of the Constitution, the compromises that were involved. I think most of the founders understood at that point in time that they were sowing the seeds for future conflict between the states. But, again, it's the context. People have to understand we were a fledgling country. We had won the war for independence, but we were still very insecure
And not together.
and not together. And so the
We
priority,
were even divided within ourselves.
that's right. And the priority at that time had to be forming a nation. And that's what the Constitutional Convention was all about.
So don't we have some military branches also celebrating some
We do.
some events come soon?
3 very important birthdays next year. The United States Army, Navy, and Marine Corps will be celebrating their 250th anniversaries next year. And so those will
In
be great
26, you're talking about.
I'm sorry, this year.
In 25.
In 25. New Year's is too close on my heels, Tommy. I can't,
No, man,
can't keep up with
I'm
it.
still trying to figure out what day of the week it is. It really threw me off this year.
Yeah.
Lastly, I am interested in knowing, I know these places don't run without employees, without utilities, without expenses.
That's right.
What is your source of funding, and how can we help you with that?
We get a lot of great support from the legislature. We've got a lot of great friends down there. They see what we do as vitally important. But we don't like to rely, just on state funding. We have a lot of great friends and private donors as well. But we need to increase the number of private donors that we have.
Do you have a website?
We do. It's AmericanVillage.org, O-R-G, and there is a donate button right on that front page there. And so actually right now we have a great opportunity from the Daniel Foundation for this year and next year. Any contributions that are applied towards our educational programming, they will match up to $100,000.
Is that Chris?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Good guy.
it's been amazing, and Chancellor Jack Hawkins from Troy University serves on their board, and he's been a great friend to us as well. So
Well, it's fascinating stuff to talk about. I'm very interested in history. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you for having me on.
We could probably talk longer, but we don't have time. So this has been Our Issues Birmingham. I hope you will help out and press the donate button on their website. Have a great Sunday, and we'll see you next week.
At ABC 3340, we're not just working for you, we're working with you. Because of you, together, we're making a difference. Thank you and keep them coming to news tips at abc3340.com or call us at 205-440-1841.